Welcome back to the Great Give Radiothon on WNHH-FM, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. We're teaming up with the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven on the 36-hour Great Give. That's that time each year. We ask you to reach deep in your pockets or onto your computer screen to help 488 nonprofits in New Haven raise money together. We're hoping to get $1.5 million total. And we've invited some of those great nonprofits onto the air here at WNHH to tell us why it's a good idea to give them money. In this hour, we got a group called the Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Society of New Haven. They're not newcomers, folks. They've been around for a long, long time doing good work. And we're going to hear about that right now. Just remember, the place you go is thegreatgive.org. You don't forget the word the. Thegreatgive.org. And you look up Hebrew Burial and Free Loan, and you'll find it. You also could look up WNHH if you'd like to help this radio station. I'm here with Alan Appel, and our guests this hour from the Hebrew Burial and Free Loan are Paul Terman and Gary Cohen. Welcome, everybody.
Paul Terman, actually.
Oh, Terman, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. If you type in just Hebrew into the search, it'll come up. Don't worry about it.
So just Hebrew.
Yeah, just Hebrew.
And by the way, speaking of which, the Jewish Federation of New Haven was supposed to come on. Judy Alpern did get sidetracked. She sends her regrets because she did sing David Melech Israel last year. It was quite a rousing performance.
Oh, that's right. And people could give by going to, you can't put in Hebrew for the Jewish Federation. You put in Jewish. Put in Jewish.
Jewish Federation.
And just one of each.
So this hour, we want everyone supported. And this hour, please think about Hebrew. Just type that for Hebrew Burial and Free Loan, and Jewish Federation for the Jewish Federation.
Right.
So, Paul, tell us about you. You've helped lead a revival of the Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Society. What are you guys up to these days, and why is it a good idea to give them money?
So we're expanding. We're an old organization. We're actually a combination of two different organizations. One that started 1899, one that started in 1909. Wow. One doing the free burials, one doing the interest-free loans, and we're revamping the organization. We're retooling for a new era. It used to be that there would be a few people coming in. They would need a little bit of money for loans, for some expenses or things like that. And we do emergency loans. If somebody, struggling to get by, suddenly has a sudden illness, they can't meet their bills, they come to us. We give them a loan for that, and then they repay it, over time. And
the important thing is that's an interest-free loan.
Yes, interest-free loans, absolutely interest-free. No charge to the person. And we're retooling to actually gear up for educational loans. Those are going to be much larger loans because of huge expenses now with education and things like that. And we're trying to bring people into that new era. And
you also bury people who can't afford a burial, right?
Exactly. So everybody deserves the dignity of being able to have a final resting place. And it's an incredibly difficult position where you have somebody who passed away and their family member can't afford a burial, and they're dealing not only with the sorrow of having lost somebody, but also with this additional financial costs, and it can be exorbitant. It can $15,000. I've heard for some things. In certain places here it's a little bit cheaper.
Alan, we better start saving.
Yeah, no, but. So
the thought never crossed my mind, Paul. But wait a second, Paul. Just Paul Terman, quickly. Pardon the dumb question, but does the organization serve just Jewish people, or is anybody eligible?
So we only serve Jewish people.
Okay.
And you have a cemetery, right, in East Haven?
Right. So we've got a cemetery. Initially, we started off just burying people in various Jewish cemeteries where we could get a plot with any of the local synagogues. But then B'nai Jacob a while back gifted us a section of land in East Haven, which we maintain for free burials if somebody can't.
And you also get some kids to help you out, right, to keep the ground.
Yeah, actually. So we've got a cemetery cleanup that we do as part of the Yale Day of Service. We're doing it actually this coming Sunday, May 6th.
Oh, all right.
And it's from 12 to 3. And if you're interested in volunteering for that, actually at the bottom of our page for the Great Give, it has a link to our cleanup at the bottom there. So
where do people congregate for that?
So we'll congregate at the cemetery. It's in Brockett Place in East Haven, and we got shovels. We've got to raise markers for people that have sunk. We cleaning away shrubbery. We'll be taking photographs of all of the stones this year. Last year we did a mapping of the cemetery. We got some nice maps walked from there. And just continuing some of the maintenance and showing that these people have dignity in their final.
And Gary, you've been in the organization a long time, haven't you?
Actually, what's our minimum membership age? 18? My father came to me one day and said, "You are now a member, and you will pay dues for the rest of your life." And I have.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, pointed out to Paul last year, I actually found an uncle of mine buried in our cemetery who died 5 years before my father was born, and nobody knew where he was until last year.
And hasn't that part of that been going on that I'm trying to remember because I've been to board meetings? You've been rediscovering some graves, right?
Right. So there have been
People who didn't have a lot of money maybe when they were buried.
Yeah, there obviously people didn't have a lot of money when they were buried. Some people couldn't afford markers. We've been going in, and anybody that didn't have markers were getting the locations from our maps. We are making markers. We have a deal with Nolan Monuments. They've been helpful with us, giving us a little bit of a break on that. And we've been getting markers for all these people.
And why does it matter, folks? Why does it matter if someone get a dignified burial?
Nobody deserves to be forgotten. You have people. It's almost a connection to those later generations. You have a child, a grandchild, a great-grandchild. You want to know where you came from. You want to be able to go there and say, hey, this is where I came from.
Alan, any thoughts? Because Alan studied religion for all his books, and he went to the seminary. Anything strike you about the Jewish approach to death that might be kind of notable and special?
Well, it's interesting. As we were waiting to come in here, I was saying I've never heard of a Christian free burial society or an Islamic free burial society, and I'm wondering, is it unique among the kind of Abraham? I'm assuming. Is there something unique about that among the Abrahamic religions, or is it unique to the history of Jewish immigration to the United States? And how is it different from what might have happened, in the world of Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof, which I saw on TV the other night, where in a small town people take care of each other, but come to the golden America, people get lost and groups form to do this kind of thing.
Well, that's exactly where it comes from, going back to either Eastern Europe or the North African and Middle Eastern Jewish communities. It was considered incumbent upon anybody who joined the community to actually contribute to the burial society, to provide for graves for people that needed them. And that is something that we've taken and we've retooled for America and for the past century and this coming century, where people that are unable to provide a grave for themselves, we provide it for them, and that's where it comes from. And I haven't encountered this among other faiths, as you've mentioned. There was recently somebody that we buried just last week, who came to us by way of a friend of his who wasn't Jewish. The person who we buried, he was a ward of the state. He didn't have anybody else.
And he came to you before he died?
No, the friend came to us.
A friend brought him.
The friend came to us with his case after he died, and then we worked very quickly to find him a plot and to work with the government officials.
So what would have been the alternative had there not been a Hebrew Free Burial Society available?
A pauper cemetery.
So in New York, you've got Potter's Field. People are kind of tossed away and forgotten. There's nobody has any type of remembrance. I've heard of people that if they're left with a government agency, they end up being cremated and basically left on a shelf. Right.
There's
indefinitely.
a Potter's Field out by West Rock that isn't used anymore, I believe, from long ago. And there's one also by the Jewish and non-Jewish cemeteries in Beaver Hill.
Huh.
But those are old. Those are at least 100 years old, I think, those graves. Wow. So now, did you guys bring a poem or a song?
to shift.
Did you
tone.
do that, Paul?
So you didn't warn me about it this year, but I remember from last year.
Oh, good.
Don't worry.
Way to go, Paul. Way to go.
Okay, so as is my style, I don't have a poem or song. I have a rabbinic statement from Rambam, the Maimonides, one of the greatest rabbis of the medieval era. Is the greatest level of charity, above which there is no greater, is to support a fellow Jew by endowing him with a gift or a loan in order to strengthen his hand so that he will not be dependent upon others. And
Well, so that's this thing about lending, because the Islamic faith, they don't believe in charging interest, and you give loans without interest.
exactly,
How does
no
that fit into Jewish?
So
philosophy?
that comes straight from Leviticus. It says, "Your brother becomes poor and cannot maintain himself with you. You shall not lend to him your money at interest." It says you should lend him at no interest, so that you're able to support that person, and that person isn't going to die or fall
And every
dependent on
50 years, forgive the debt.
that is actually it's every 7 years.
Oh,
You know, and
the
it's
Jubilee. Okay.
it's so odd to hear this kind of thing, the no interest precept among the Jews, because throughout the Middle Ages, of course, one of the great sources of the beefs against the Jews and anti-Semitism was to lend money at usurious rates.
But they weren't lending them to
Not
fellow Jews.
to
Right.
the Christians.
So
That's right.
And they were being excluded from other.
So they were
professions.
compelled to do something like that.
Well,
right.
historically, that was something that the Christians actually took up. That they took this notion that they shouldn't be lending at interest to fellow Christians. So from whom could they borrow? Because then the Christians didn't want to lend to each other, and so then from whom could they borrow? They borrowed from the Jews, and the Jews charged them interest, and that's how that mythos became.
So Gary, you said your father enlisted you in this group. How long
Right.
ago was that?
I beg your pardon?
How long ago was that? That you became a member and your father tells you? Decades.
Well, men aren't supposed
50
to.
some odd years?
Men aren't
Wow, so you've
embarrassed
been in
about
this
their
group
No,
age.
I'm
50
not.
years.
I'm just trying to remember. I've been,
So for 50 years, you've been in this group and your father before him. And does this kind of date back, do you think, to when a different time in Jewish community in New Haven, when people were more connected to the roots of how they got here, the kind of immigrant societies? Because when I go to the East Haven Cemetery, there are different sections for the landsman societies and stuff like that. Do you think, as Alan was saying earlier, there's something about the way community took care of each other that we don't anymore in our society?
I think that immigrants coming in, they feel like people that are currently here feel that the immigrants need help, and it's true, they do. They sometimes come here with nothing, and that's you hear stories about refugees nowadays. They have nothing on their backs, and that was the same thing with a lot of Jewish immigrants that were coming in back in the day, and that's how this organization got started. And it's part of society that you start kind of getting a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more relaxed, and you think maybe your group doesn't need that help anymore. But it's not true. There are lots of poor people, lots of poor Jewish people that are not necessarily immigrants, although we do have a lot of people that we help from the former Soviet Union, Jewish immigrants from there that we've been helpful towards. And just like I'll give you an example of one story. Who's a person who's been established here for a while, and he's a great guy. He got downsized from his job, and he had trouble getting a new job, but he got one lined up. But unfortunately, he was divorced, and he was late on his child support payment. He had no job; he couldn't make it, and he was actually being held by the court. It seemed like it was a modern day debtor's prison, and his lawyer actually came.
Held by the court, he was in jail?
He was in jail. Is what I was told. His lawyer came to us and said, "There's this guy. He's a member of the Jewish community. He's about to start a new job tomorrow, but he's being held by the court."
Oh my God! And then you can't get the money to pay it back.
Right. And
We have a
so
crazy
then we
thing about locking up people.
yeah. So then we got him the money and got it going.
That's a great service there. Done help the kid and the ex get
Yeah.
the money
Yeah.
from the Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Association, which we're asking you this hour on the Great Give Radiothon to please consider getting online and going to thegreatgive.org and typing in Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Association. Just Hebrew. Just put Hebrew, you'll find it.
Yeah.
And they can use the money.
And I should point out that we've currently got a match going. Members of our board, combined with Connecticut Security Solutions, have a match up for the first $825. So that's pretty good.
That's great.
It's
Double your impact.
A one-to-one match.
That's
Yeah.
a dollar for dollar, yes.
Exactly.
So, what's the rate of repayment? I imagine it must be quite high.
Yes. Actually, this is historically high with our organization, with other free loan, Jewish free loan organizations throughout the country. We have close to 100% repayment.
Excellent.
And sometimes people are a little bit late, but they
But these are modest loans, right, Paul? It's so funny. This sounds like a Back to the Future. It sounds like a kind of micro loan program of the kind that have been pioneered in the developing world to get $100 given to a woman in Bangladesh so she can start a business. It's almost as if this is a version of that was started a century ago.
It very much is. It used to be that maybe back a century ago somebody needed a loan to get their cart for selling their wares or something like that. Now somebody can come to us, get a loan. Most of our loans are about $1,000, although we are tooling up for like $5,000 for educational loans and things like that. But somebody can come to us now, start their business. They need a laptop, right? They're doing something online. So they come to us. We can give them a loan to get that money to get them started. And then that injects money into the local economy. It's like a little local business, and you get this cycling action because they pay back the money. We loan it out to somebody else who needs either has an emergency or needs another business startup, and it's this cycle that keeps going in the local economy, which is very great.
So, how many individual situations, from burial to small loan, are you doing, and how many do you think you're going to be able to do in this new larger loan idea?
So we've got about a dozen people that we've been working with recently, either on the burials or the loans. But it's a place where we're coming from for an expansion. We've got a lot of people that have come to us over the past year and this year that have said, "Hey, we need money for educational loans." And for an example, there's this one little girl who's starting college next year. She got accepted to Quinnipiac, and she has I think it was a $15,000 scholarship, and she can't quite make the tuition payment, and her parents are able to contribute what they can, but they need an additional fund to get off and get her her dream going.
Gary, now when you say 50 years you've been involved with this organization, Hebrew Burial and Free Loan, what changes have you noticed, both in the organization and the needs in the Jewish community?
Well, one of the big things is I've been a member for over 50 years, but I was only active for the last 10 or 12, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And so obviously I've seen a lot of change. At one point, we had maximum loans, an emergency of $300. Well, of course, that doesn't cut it today because what can you do with $300?
Mm-hmm.
So our loans are much bigger now because that's what's needed for any little thing. And, of course, at that time, when I was a kid, you're in your 20s, you don't think much about a free burial. But I think a lot about it now.
Mm. And, Paul, now you're newer to New Haven, about 10 years or 5?
2 years.
2 years only.
Yeah.
But in that time, you've come and gotten, not too many young people come to a city and get right involved with the Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Association and take new directions. What was your interest in getting involved?
So my interest was started from my wife, actually. So my wife,
Sharon brought you.
yeah. So I've been married for about 2 years now, and my wife has been a member of the organization for a number of years. She's been in New Haven for over a decade, and she was really interested in the free loan side of things. She felt like that was something that she really had a connection with, that it's something that has like this biblical connection, this mitzvah that she can do through our organization. And I've got a little bit of an interest in cemeteries. I guess I'm a cemetery geek. And it seemed like a great merger. So she brought me to the annual meeting, which we're doing in June, by the way. If anybody's interested, email me. And that's how it all got started.
I want to know more about your being a cemetery geek. Is it Jewish cemeteries or all cemeteries?
All cemeteries. There's lots of history there. You can see different waves of immigration, how different people had different attitudes. You can look at even, say, for example, the Jewish cemeteries in New Haven. You've got a lot of the Germans that are in the Mishkan Yisrael cemetery that are. You can see large monuments around the turn of the century. Then you start seeing smaller monuments as you get later on. You look at other cemeteries that are fraternal organizations, and they, if they have Hebrew on there, if they have English on there, if there's Russian on there also. Back where I was living back in Texas before I moved here, there were a lot of cemeteries, old Czech immigrant cemeteries in the area. Oh. And you can see the demographics of the community, how if they've retained tombstones in Czech, if they've moved on to English, how that's worked with their ethnic group.
So Paul, if memory serves, didn't one of those Greers, one of the
Ellie Greer really revived a lot of the
Ellie
the
Greer did
cemeteries here and did a database.
did a database of all the Jewish burial locations in New Haven. Is that something that the Hebrew Burial Society avails itself of?
So we're not associated with the Jewish Cemetery Association, which is what Ellie Greer worked with, but Ezzie Greer. But we do, if people come to us and they say, hey, we've got somebody, we don't know where he is, I'll be more than happy to look up on the database for them, and I help with that.
They are a treasure trove. My wife and I last winter, like really freezing day, went to where my father's family in a landsman society in Staten Island, where landsman society, whatever you call them, from Semiotic, and they were all buried around 1900. My wife was doing genealogical research. And we actually went out in this frigid day, and all these tombstones were all on top of each other, all crammed together. We were running through the rows, discovering relatives we didn't know existed based on who was buried near whom, and reading the Hebrew to see who was the son of whom or who was the daughter who had taken all these photos. And it really filled in gaps from the historical research. And there's been such an explosion of renewed interest in genealogy.
No,
The cemeteries definitely play a role in remembering where we came from.
This was the Jewish cemetery in Staten Island.
Yeah. And remembering, knowing who we are today based on who we came from.
And going back to what you were saying, the project with that database, it's out of date, right? So it was 5-6 years ago now. So we've been working with updating them with our burials, and I've personally done some work trying to update with some of the other cemeteries as well.
But I found what they do have is very helpful if you're looking for somebody.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And what could be more helpful than the Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Association New Haven, which since 1899,
Right.
Yeah.
going strong. Let's help them keep going strong, folks. It's time to go to thegreatgive.org. We're going to take a break where there's time to do that. You won't miss any of the action.
They put in Hebrew?
Just the word Hebrew, Alan.
Just Hebrew.
And up it's going to pop.
And remember, we've got the match up to $825.
Yeah, you can't leave that money on the table.
Exactly.
And you also have a wonderful cemetery cleaning on May 6th.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Wonderful.
It's all there.
Everybody there too. Okay, so listen.
You bring all the hands, we'll bring all the tools.
Paul Terman, thanks for joining us. Gary Cohen from the Hebrew Society. Burial Free Loan Association. We're going to take a break at the Radiothon now, and then we'll be back with 108 monkeys and a whole lot of activity going on in this room. In the meantime, take a listen to the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from their CD, A Plea for Peace. Now, we know how to feel free. We just got to remember to book our flight. So hold tight and book it here on WNHH, your home for community radio.